Hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome to the channel. Now one of the things I like to do on this channel is rebuild cheap European cars and get them back on the road. And getting them back on the road means I get to drive them around. But if you, like me, drive on the road, you know that other people do a lot of crazy stuff. And that's why I like to have a dash cam in my cars. Now if you've watched the channel before, you also know that I like to modernize my cars to have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And today we're going to check something out that adds a front and rear dash cam and wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in any car. This is the Seicane H041. Now you may recognize the name Seicane because I've actually installed two of their radios, one in my W220 S-Class and one in my Volvo XC90. Now those weren't sponsored, but they actually reached out and asked me if I wanted to check this out. So let's take a look. Okay, so this is the main display. So this has a 10.26 inch screen, and as you can see right here, has a front-facing dash cam built in. It also does wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, like I mentioned. Let's see, what else do we have? We've got our power source right here, plugs into your 12 volt. It's got a pretty long extension. A couple cables here. We've got USB-C to power this. We've got a USB port to power anything else. A little GPS connector for an optional GPS antenna, which I'll talk about a little later. I also get an aux cable with a good length. And a rear camera. See, it's got a camera 4-pin and some mounting screws or mounting adhesive. Now the main unit here has a mounting pad that you can angle with a pre-installed adhesive. We've got the camera that can be adjusted up and down and left and right. And we have our ports here. We have the power input, the video camera in, which is a smaller size than a headphone jack. We've got a micro SD card slot to record your dashcam footage, and the aux input. So let's talk about that. There's actually 4 ways to get sound out of this. There's built-in speakers, there's aux input if your car has an aux input, there's dual Bluetooth, so you can connect it to your car, and there's an FM transmitter, so it'll broadcast on the frequency you set and you match it on your car to get the audio through that. Now the rear camera will always be on and recording when you're using this, but you'll notice here on this harness, there's a red wire. So what you can do is tap it into the power for your reverse bulb, and that'll send a 12 volt signal to the head unit and automatically display this as a backup camera. So that's pretty cool. You can install this inside or outside the car depending on what works best for you. Now let's talk a little more about the dash cam. The front-facing camera records in up to 4K resolution. The rear camera records in 1080p. You can adjust the recording loop length so it doesn't make a giant file, it just makes clips of 1, 3, or 5 minutes long. So it's easier to find when something happens. You can set up a G sensor to detect collisions and lock a video clip automatically so that if you're in a crash, it saves it. There's a phone app you can use to review and transfer footage off the unit, though you can also get the footage off from the SD card. There's an optional GPS antenna that allows you to track position and tie that to the video footage, which can be useful for insurance claims and stuff like that. Seicane also offers an optional harness that allows you to wire this directly to your battery so that the head unit can be used to monitor your car while it's parked. And that brings us back to the G sensor, which would allow the unit to start recording or save a clip if someone bumps into your car while it's parked. Now that covers all the specs and what's included, so let's go check it out in a car. All right, so let's set this up. The first thing is gonna be to plug in our 12 volt. So I've got a plug in the back that's already plugged into, and I got my cables here. Let's plug in our USB-C, right there. I also ran the backup camera, plug that in. You can plug in our aux cable. This would be a pretty good spot. All right, and here we can see, you can actually toggle the rear camera and the front. You can see both at the same time on our landing screen. This is the default screen, which is our dash cam setup. And you can see, you can toggle between just the front, just the rear, and both. Now, if we hit the home button right here, we have the rest of our menu. We've got our audio output options, so it could be to onboard speakers, via FM, aux output, and then Bluetooth right here. Connect your phone to the car Bluetooth, and then it'll run it through there. We're gonna stick to aux. Right here we have our recorder, it's a shortcut to the dash cam. We have our replay, which is clips. So you can look at stuff. That's when I was testing it inside. I'll show you what that looks like a little later. You got our mobile internet, which is labeled, which is actually Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, AirPlay, Android Mirror, just Bluetooth music if you want to just play Bluetooth music. And your Wi-Fi info, which is to connect your phone to this via the app. And our settings here is all the settings. So your CarPlay position, depending on if you have a left-hand drive or right-hand drive car, the resolution of your recording, your loop recording settings, your G-sensor settings, so how sensitive it is, your screensaver, rear camera, parking guidelines, especially useful if you set up a backup camera. If you need to mirror your backup camera, your rear camera, if you need to flip your camera, your rear camera, depending on how it's set up. Assistant language, your time settings, so you can set that up. Date format, SD card format, factory reset, and your system version. Now let's connect Apple CarPlay. To connect to this, we need to connect to the head unit via Bluetooth. Once it connects, it'll prompt you to use CarPlay. That sets it up. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you can actually have CarPlay set up to show your front camera or your back camera. So now you can have a permanent rear view. But if you go to your settings, your CarPlay position, you can switch to full screen. And then when you reconnect to CarPlay, it'll be back into full screen instead. There we go. So you have the option. You can also do the same for Android Auto. If you want to connect Android Auto, it's the same thing as CarPlay. You can look at the equipment name here and connect your phone via Bluetooth. So find it in Bluetooth. Your phone's going to connect. Then Android Auto works, and you get all your Android Auto compatible apps. Now let's get back into the car. You can adjust the brightness of the screen too. Now the other option we have for connecting is to go for the FM. Audio out, we'll go to FM. Choose 89.9, I guess, which is what's on the car right now. Let's try that. That sounds good. And that's by setting this to match. We can do the onboard speakers, which are a little quiet, but functional. Go back to aux. And Bluetooth, we'll toggle the mode here so that your phone will only connect to this for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and then you can connect your phone to the car itself to send audio directly to the radio. Now when you're in CarPlay or Android Auto and you touch it, you can toggle, you have a little toggle here that shows up, so you could switch directly to your dash cam. We have a volume toggle, which is useful if you're using the onboard speakers, brightness toggle, and a shortcut back to home. Now as an example here, I've mounted the backup camera there. It's on the rear hatch. So you would have to account for the hatch opening, but then you could tuck all the wiring in along the headliner and towards the front. And you could potentially run it down along the sills to the front or across or inside the trim towards the front as well. Now here's an example of how I ran the backup camera wire in my Volvo. Now for mounting, you do have little holes on the pad if you want to screw it into your dash for a very permanent mount, or you can peel the adhesive off and attach it to whatever you need. Now let's go for a quick drive to test out the dash cam. So if you wanted a cleaner look on the install than this, because this is, I'm testing it out, you could run these along the back because you have a lot of length on all the cables. So just run it to the windshield, over the side, and down, and over to everything you have to plug into. The screen's nice and bright, which is good. Pretty easy to see. And obviously the distance you'll be putting it will depend a lot on your car. This has a pretty steep dash here, so I have to move it a little further back for the dash cam to clear. But if you have a flatter dash, you might be able to mount it a lot closer to you. You can switch to the camera with the shortcut on the right. There we go. And then the little phone icon will let you switch back to CarPlay. Now let's switch over to the footage I got from the cameras. So as you can see, we've got a nice wide angle lens, and the footage is nice and clear. Same thing for the rear camera. It's nice and clear. You can tell it's a little bit of a lower resolution, but still really functional and useful. I also drove the same section of road at night, and you can see it's a little bit harder to make out text on signs, but still quite good. And if you're worried about the streaks you're seeing here, it's not the camera, it's actually the windshield. A previous owner must have let the windshield wipers get really dirty or worn out, and it really scratched up the glass. The rear camera is a little dimmer in the dark than the front one. Now I mentioned before there's an app you can use to get all the footage off of this onto your phone or review it on your phone. To do that, you can go into the mobile internet page, and all the way on the right, go to Wi-Fi info. You want to toggle on the Wi-Fi here, and you've got your SSID and password that you can use to connect your phone. Then in your Wi-Fi settings, you can connect to it. Some phones will try to disconnect from it because it has no internet, so you'll have to double check in the settings to allow you to stay connected. But once that's done, you can open the Roadcam app, tap the camera or the network that the camera's on. So once you're connected, if it's recording, you'll hit stop recording, tap video, and you'll have access to all the video files that you filmed while you were driving. And you can clip them. If you want to get the whole file, you'll want to pull the micro SD card out and connect it to your computer. But for smaller clips, you can get them out through the app. So it's nice and convenient. So overall, the Seicane H041 is really good value for money because you get wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, a front and rear dash cam, which can double as a backup camera, and all that for just $100. So if you're interested in getting one, I'll leave a link down in the video description. I want to thank Seicane again for sending this to me to check out because it's a really neat product. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. And if you want to see more videos like this, or you want to watch me rebuild cheap European cars, consider subscribing. There's a lot of videos, including a rebuild series on the Range Rover I drove earlier. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.